I didn't want his body. I wanted the feeling that someone, somewhere, still looked at me like I was made of stars. Before I touched his skin, I was already aching not for sex, but for proof that I was still radiant, still wanted, still visible. It wasn't about age. It was about being seen in the light I used to wear so easily, the kind that used to pull people toward me without me having to reach. It was about that quiet desperation that settles in a woman's chest when her reflection starts asking questions her soul doesn't know how to answer. I wanted to feel soft again, worshipped. Not like a prize, but like a sanctuary. And sometimes, younger men look at you like that, like you've already lived 1,000 lives and they want to kneel in the doorway of your mystery. That kind of looking can undo you if you've been invisible long enough. I wasn't chasing youth. I was chasing return. The return to a time when my body felt like a celebration, not a question mark. When my touch wasn't measured against silence, but responded to like an invocation. And when he looked at me, God, I almost believed it. I almost believed I was still untouched by grief, still glowing from the inside, still made of something he hadn't seen before. But mirrors lie. And desire can dress itself up as healing, when really it's just hunger and silk. The ache came after. After the skin cooled, after the breath steadied, after the moment passed and I was still me, still carrying the same hollow no hands could hold. Because what I really wanted was to be known, to be held at the root, to be looked at without being studied, touched without being tested, loved without being compared to a younger version of myself I haven't seen in years. I wanted to be held without disappearing, but instead, I became a mirror, one he looked into to see his own worth reflected, while I disappeared in the shine. That's the cost, isn't it? When the touch feels like recognition but ends as a reminder that you are still reaching for something you thought someone else could give. And now I know, desire without presence is a trick. It lifts you for a moment, only to place you right back in your own arms, emptier than before. But this time, I didn't shame myself for wanting. I didn't collapse into regret. I just let it be what it was, a reminder that what I crave cannot be touched into existence. It must be remembered by me, within me, for me. So I place my hand over my own chest, and I whisper, before you reach for someone's skin, make sure you are not abandoning your own. I thought he saw me. Not the version I'd spent years learning to present, not the practiced smile, not the polite laugh, not the woman who knew how to take up less space so no one would leave. I thought he saw through it. The way his eyes stayed on me just a little too long. Like he was studying, not just looking. Like he wasn't rushing past me to get to someone shinier, but pausing, like he'd found something sacred. And for a moment, I let myself believe I was being seen. Not for my story or my scars, but for the way I carried them, for the quiet in my voice, for the softness that hadn't been touched in years. There's something dangerous about being noticed when you've been invisible too long. It doesn't feel like danger, it feels like air. Like someone just cracked open the window in a room where you forgot you were holding your breath. And I inhaled him, his curiosity, his hunger, his fascination with my voice, with the way I moved, with the history written across my silence. It felt like I was being discovered, like someone had finally stumbled into the ruins of me and called it beautiful instead of broken. And I ate it up. Not because I was naive, but because I was starving. There's a kind of famine that grows when your body is no longer reflected back to you in someone else's eyes. When you've gone years being loved for your resilience, but never for your softness. When even in bed, you feel like you're performing tenderness, not being met in it. So when he looked at me, really looked, I didn't care about the stories I should have told myself, about the difference in years, about the caution I'd once mastered. I just wanted to stay inside the moment where I felt like enough again. It wasn't about lust. It was about recognition. About that sacred high when someone makes you feel like you've just been handed back a version of yourself you thought had died. And that mirror, God. That mirror. For the first time in years, I liked what I saw. Not because I had changed, but because his gaze softened the parts of me that had been hardening for years. I stood a little taller, wore red again, brushed my hair slower, as if every strand deserved attention. I became the woman I was when I still believed in magic, when I still thought being seen equaled being kept. That was the illusion, not that he desired me, but that desire meant something more, that it was the start of something lasting, not just the spark before the burn. I thought he saw me, but he only saw what I lit up inside of him, and I mistook that glow for love. I thought he was reading me like scripture. Turns out he was just flipping through the pages to see how the story might end. And still, I can't hate myself for it. Because that fantasy, that fleeting, shimmering moment where I felt worthy without effort, beautiful without apology, wanted without needing to shrink that moment, was real to me, even if it wasn't to him. We touched, but it wasn't the skin that wrecked me. It was the hope, the quiet, aching hope that maybe this time I didn't have to earn it. That maybe this time someone would stay because they wanted to, not because I convinced them to. I told myself stories. And not because I was foolish, but because I needed them. Because sometimes the illusion of being loved feels kinder than the truth of being alone. And when you've been alone long enough, you forget what it feels like to be chosen without hesitation. You forget how intoxicating it is to hear someone say your name like it matters. To feel eyes settle on you not as a favor, but as a homecoming. He said things that sounded like forever, even if his actions whispered temporary. And I heard what I wanted to hear. I let his wonder rewrite my silence. I let his presence fill the places I thought were unfillable. But presence isn't proof, and curiosity is not commitment. Eventually the mirror fogged, the gaze shifted, the text slowed. And that glow I found in myself through him began to fade, not because I stopped being beautiful, but because the reflection was never really mine. I confused being wanted with being understood. I mistook being touched for being safe. I thought I was being rediscovered, but I was only being revisited. Briefly, like a song that played once and never made it onto the playlist. Still, I don't regret the moment I felt alive again, even if it was borrowed. Even if it didn't last. Because in that moment, I remembered what it was like to feel like I could be loved again. And maybe that remembering was the beginning of something real, not with him, but with me. Because after he stopped seeing me, I started learning how to see myself. Not through the lens of hunger, not through the eyes of someone younger, but through the quiet knowing that I was never invisible. I just forgot how to look inward. So yes, I thought he saw me, and for a moment, I let myself believe it. But the real miracle was that I saw myself again too. And this time, I didn't vanish when he left the room. I gave him what no one ever gave me. Not just my body, but the softness behind it. The warmth I had to build with my own hands after the world taught me coldness too young. I gave him safety. Not the kind you see, but the kind you feel. The kind of safety where you don't have to perform, don't have to explain, don't have to edit yourself to be held. I gave him the silence between my words, the spaces where I used to hide. And I let him rest there like maybe if I gave him peace, he'd realize I was home. No one ever gave me that. No one ever stayed long enough to see the way I give, the way I love, the way I hold what's fragile without making it feel broken. But I gave it to him freely, not because he asked, but because something in me still believed that if I loved harder, softer, deeper, it would finally be enough. I fed him with the parts of me I had starved. Tenderness I never received. Understanding no one ever extended to me. Compassion I had to learn alone. In the quiet rooms where I stitched myself back together after being left behind again and again, I offered all of that, in glances, in hands that knew how to soothe before they touched, in words I didn't even know I was saving. I gave him my wisdom not as advice, but as presence. The kind that listens without trying to fix. The kind that holds space when the room feels too loud. The kind of love that says, you can fall apart here. I won't run. And deep down, I think I believed that by giving him what I always longed for, I would finally receive it too. That love would echo. That what I poured out would return. But he wasn't built to hold what I gave. He liked the feeling, the way it wrapped around him like a warm blanket he didn't have to earn. But you can't build with someone who only wants refuge and never offers you a home. I made him feel safe, but I never felt safe with him. I listened to his silences, but mine were met with distance. I opened every door inside me, while he kept his locked and thanked me for the view. And still, I kept giving, because that's what love taught me, that to be valuable, you must be useful. You must give more than you need. You must prove your worth by how much you're willing to bleed without complaint. And so, I did, quietly, gracefully, until giving began to feel like grieving. Until my generosity started to rot. Until I was hollow from pouring, and he was full from taking, and neither of us could call it love anymore without choking on the lie. There is a grief that comes from giving without being met. It doesn't scream. It doesn't shatter. It just sinks, heavy and silent, like something precious dropped into deep water. I don't hate him. I don't even blame him. Because the truth is, I made a contract he never signed. I offered shelter and mistook his arrival for commitment. But he was just passing through. I gave him what no one ever gave me because I wanted to rewrite my story. I wanted to be the love I never received. And maybe that was noble, but it was also lonely, because you can't save yourself by saving someone else first. Now I know love is not proven by what you offer, but by what is returned. Not demanded, not expected, but received and reciprocated. So I'm learning, slowly, to give without emptying, to love without disappearing, to offer warmth without setting myself on fire just to keep someone else from going cold. Because I deserve shelter, too. I deserve to be met, not just admired for how I hold, but chosen for who I am when I'm no longer performing safety. I gave him what no one ever gave me. But now, I'm learning to give it to myself. The craving wasn't for sex. It was for significance. To matter in a way that didn't vanish when the lights turned off. To be held with intention, not just touch. To be remembered, not just reached for. The weight didn't come after he left. It came after I realized he didn't need me the way I needed him. That what I called connection, he might have called a moment. That what I built a sacred altar for in my heart, he may never have even named. That's what stings the most, not the absence, but the question it leaves behind. Did I imagine all of it? The way he looked at me like I was rare, the softness in his voice. The way his hand rested on my hip like he had arrived somewhere. Was I just a pause? A place to feel something briefly before he returned to whatever life he actually belonged to? It's humiliating not because I gave myself, but because I wrapped that giving in meaning and placed it in his hands like a gift, and he held it like a cigarette, something to flick away once it burned down. I needed to be needed, and I hate that. Hate how desperate that sentence feels in my mouth. How childish. How naked. But it's the truth. Because for a moment, I thought I was becoming unforgettable. That I was leaving fingerprints on his soul. That I was finally being seen in a way that would echo after I was gone. But he didn't echo. He evaporated. And I'm left here with this embarrassing ache not just for him, but for the version of me who believed that being desired meant being cherished. No one tells you how shameful it can feel to want someone who doesn't need you. Not romantically, but emotionally. To want to be the place they run to when the world gets too loud. To be the soft thing they return to, not just the soft thing they touch. And when that doesn't happen, when you realize your significance was one-sided, it hollows something. Something deep. Something that doesn't cry, just aches. Because you didn't just want to be wanted. You wanted to matter, to be chosen again and again, not out of convenience, but out of reverence. And when that doesn't come, you start to question your own glow. You look in the mirror and wonder what part of you was forgettable. What part of you didn't stay with him? What part of you wasn't enough to become more than a memory without a name? It's an emotional hangover, this shame, this silence, this wanting that never found a home. And I've carried it in my body. In the slow way I move some mornings. In the hesitation before I let someone else close. in the quiet wondering of whether I'm truly desired or just available. But now, I'm trying to forgive myself. Not for wanting, but for thinking that my wanting had to be mirrored to be valid. Because I did feel something. Even if he didn't. I did glow. Even if he looked away. And I was real. Even if he was never ready to hold something with weight. This ache is heavy, yes, but it's mine. And I'm learning how to carry it without shame. He wasn't cruel. He was unaware. He didn't mean to hurt me. He just didn't understand that what I gave wasn't casual. That every glance, every laugh, every time I opened the door and let him into my silence, it all carried weight. I didn't give him my body like a gift. I gave him sanctuary, a place where he could put his restlessness down, where he didn't have to perform or explain or lead, where he could just be and I would hold it, all of it, because I always have. He didn't ask for all that, but I offered it anyway. Because some part of me still believed that if I gave enough of myself, someone would finally stay. Not because I was desperate, but because I was patterned. Because my body remembers every time it reached for love and found absence. Every time I gave softness and got silence. Every time I swallowed what I needed just to keep someone from leaving. So when he touched me, when he smiled like I was magic, when he called me beautiful in that low, quiet way, my nervous system lit up like it had been waiting years for someone to say, "I see you." But he didn't know that. He couldn't feel the centuries of ache in my spine, the way my breath slowed just to stay in rhythm with his. He didn't understand that for me, every second of closeness was a prayer. Please don't vanish. Not this time, but he wasn't cruel. He just didn't carry that kind of ache. Not yet. Not in his body. He hadn't lived enough hunger to recognize a feast when it was laid bare before him. So he touched what he could, took what he needed, and left like it never happened. Not because he wanted to hurt me, but because to him, it didn't feel like it meant anything. To him, it was light, simple, momentary. But to me, it was the first time in a long time that I let someone all the way in. And so, when he walked away, I stayed. Not physically, but emotionally, energetically, spiritually. I stayed in the memory, in the scent of him still woven into my pillowcase. In the silence that followed his absence, like an echo that didn't know it was done. He didn't ghost me. Not in the traditional sense. He just faded, gently, without explanation, without cruelty. Without ever realizing he was holding something sacred in hands too young to know its weight. And for a while, I hated myself for staying, for holding on to someone who had already let go before I even noticed. But now, I see it for what it was. Not weakness. Not foolishness. Just depth. He didn't meet me there because he hadn't learned how to swim in that part of himself yet. And I can't fault someone for not breathing underwater when they've only ever lived at the surface. So, no, he wasn't cruel. He was unaware. And that doesn't make the wound less real, but it does make it less personal. It wasn't about me being unworthy. It was about him not knowing what worth even feels like when it's offered in stillness and presence and grace. And I don't need to hate him to heal. I don't need him to apologize to reclaim my softness. He wasn't mine to keep. He was a mirror, a moment. A reminder that I am still willing to give love that deep, but only now to someone who can feel the earth move when I do. This is what I took back from him. Not in one clean moment, but slowly, gently, like pulling my fingers out of water I didn't realize I had been drowning in. It started with my voice. The one I'd softened so he wouldn't feel overwhelmed. The one I adjusted light, agreeable, careful. So I took it back. Not in an argument, but in the way I began to speak to myself again, with truth, with edge, with the kind of honesty that doesn't flinch anymore. Then, I took back my hunger. The part of me that reached, not just for touch, but for being chosen. I used to call that craving love. But now I know it was the echo of years spent starving. So I fed myself, instead. Not just food, but desire. I let myself want fully, wildly without shaping that wanting to fit someone else's hands. I took back my warmth, the softness I gave him so easily, the way I made space around his wounds, as if mine didn't exist. I used to hand out safety like a gift bag, thinking if I gave enough, someone would stay. But now I hold that warmth like it's sacred, like it belongs to me first. Like I am not a shelter unless I'm also being sheltered. I took back my gaze, the way I looked at him like he was art, like he was holy, like he was the miracle I'd been waiting for. But I was the one praying. I was the one staying. I was the one giving my reverence to someone who never looked at me the same. So now, when I look in the mirror, I try to see myself with that same awe. Like, maybe I was always the beautiful thing, the rare thing, the sacred thing that didn't need anyone else to confirm its glow. I took back the silence, too. The kind I used to fill with wondering where he was, what I did wrong, how I could bend a little more to be wanted again. Now, the silence is mine. I fill it with music, with poetry, with the sound of my own breath as I fall asleep, not waiting for anyone to text back. And maybe the most powerful thing I took back was the narrative. The story I used to tell myself that I was the one who loved more, the one who felt too much, the one who always stays too long. I was the one who gave, honestly. I was the one who let my heart break open without asking someone else to carry it. I was the one who showed up. And now, I'm the one walking away. Not out of anger, but out of clarity. This wasn't about revenge. It was about returning to myself, to the woman who knows what she's worth, even if no one names it, to the girl inside me who waited by the door for love and is now being led back home by a quieter, stronger, wiser version of herself. I don't need him to know what he lost. That's not the point anymore. The point is, I know what I almost gave up myself. And I caught her just in time, held her hand, promised her she'd never be forgotten again in someone else's shadow, promised her she would never have to trade pieces of her soul for scraps of attention, promised her that love will come, but it will never again ask her to disappear to be chosen. This is what I took back from him. Everything I was always meant to keep. And this time, I'm not letting it go. If you touch him, let it be from power, not hunger. Not because you need to be seen. Not because his eyes make you feel young again. Not because his hands make you forget how long it's been since someone looked at you and stayed. Let it be from fullness. Let it be from the sacred, knowing that you are already whole, already worthy, already radiant, even in silence, even in solitude. If you let him into your body, make sure he's not walking into your ache. Make sure he's entering a temple, not a wound. Because your skin is not an apology. Your desire is not a plea. Your softness is not currency to trade for closeness that vanishes in the morning. Do you want to be desired? Or do you want to be devoured and left hollow again? Do you want to feel wanted for a night? Or remembered for a lifetime? You do not need to be rescued. You are not starving. You do not have to offer yourself to feel like you exist. There is a difference between being touched and being met, between being taken and being chosen. So if you touch him with your eyes wide open. Touch him because your body sings, not because your heart is begging. Touch him with fire in your belly, not fog in your chest. Touch him like a woman who knows she is the gift, not the one being tested for worth. Let him feel the privilege of being close to you. Let him rise to your presence, or leave in your silence. But never again let your longing drag you back into places that ask you to shrink. If he sees you, really sees you, not just your skin, but your soul, then let him in. But if you feel yourself reaching, proving, disappearing, pause, breathe, return. You are not a girl hoping to be noticed. You are a woman remembering she's sacred. You do not chase, you choose, and your choosing is holy. So let every kiss be an affirmation, not a transaction. Let every touch say, I remember who I am, not please tell me I matter. This time, if you let him close, let it be from power, from clarity, from the knowing that you are already the fire. And if he cannot meet you there, you'll still burn bright all on your own.